I like the music, Kevin.
It makes it less awkward while people are waiting.
Yeah, a little bit. And panelists, if you can unmute yourself now, please do.
All right, guys, let's
Shanae, if you can unmute yourself. Great.
Let's get this started. So, welcome everyone. Good evening. My name's Kevin Harris, and welcome to our Elevating Black Voices event. So I am the chair of the Middlesex United Way Young Leaders Society, and tonight's event is being hosted by the Young Leaders Society. This group provides networking, volunteering, and leadership development opportunities for young professionals who live or work in Middlesex County. You can tell who we are by all of our fun matching backgrounds. Some of us weren't able to get the backgrounds, but there are a few more of us. One of our members, Kelly Dougherty, has taken a great initiative, put in tons of hard work, and was a driving force of why this event is taking place today. So let me pass it over to her so she can start the program.
Hi, everyone. Thank you, Kevin. My name is Kelly Dougherty, and I'm the event coordinator for the Middlesex United Way Young Leaders Society. Thank you guys all for joining us for what we know will be a night of education and inspiration. We are so honored to be joined by a panel of 6 inspiring Black leaders in our community who are doing some really amazing things to create much needed change in Middlesex County and beyond, and whose perspectives on racial equity and inclusion we will be elevating tonight. To help focus our discussion, we have generated 5 questions for our panelists, all of which they had been given in advance. I am here as your facilitator to lightly guide the conversation and ensure each panelist has an opportunity to speak freely on each question while being mindful of the time for our current limited Q&A at the end. The topics we will be discussing are sensitive and maybe difficult to face, and that's okay. We feel the need to address these issues greatly outweighs the cost in doing so, and hope that tonight will be a positive launching ground for future collaborative change. I will do my best to represent the Young Leaders Society and our community well, but please understand that facilitating a conversation like this is a learning process for me and for my fellow young leaders as well. And so we are receptive to any feedback you may have. If you feel tonight's event was beneficial, definitely let us know, and we will consider hosting more events like this on other subjects in the future. Amy will now speak about the format of our event and any housekeeping rules.
Hi everyone, my name is Amy and I'm a member of the Middlesex United Way Young Leaders. I will be the moderator for tonight's event and will be reading the questions that come through. In regards to the flow of the event, we ask all participants remain muted throughout the event. If you would like to ask a question to any of the panelists, please submit it through the chat. At the end of the event, there will be a 30-minute Q&A and all questions will be asked in the order of which they're received. We also welcome feedback in the chat as well. The recording of the event and the chat will be distributed in the follow-up email after the call.
Thank you, Amy. So we're going to start this off first by having each panelist introduce themselves and tell us how they're connected to Middlesex County. And just a heads up that Erica Lynn Hunter was unable to join the Zoom chat, so I have her on speakerphone, so she'll be responding through that. And we're going to start with Shardae Fulton. Go ahead, Shardae.
Hi, good evening, everyone. Again, yes, my name is Shardae Fulton. And my connection to the Middlesex County community is that I'm a 5-year resident. I've lived in Connecticut overall for 11 years. I came to Middlesex County actually because I came from an abusive relationship. And when I first came here, I wanted to get heavily involved, and I actually got involved with North End Action Team, which is the organization that assisted me with finding housing. And from there, I started working for Middletown Public Schools, and I currently work there as well. And that allowed me to kind of immerse myself within the community, being on several boards and commissions here in town. And I also ran for office, and I'm one of the commissioners for planning and zoning.
Great, thanks so much, Shardae. And next we have Shardae Nicholson.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you, Kelly, and the Middlesex United Way Young Leaders Society. I appreciate you all welcoming me here I am a born and raised in Middletown. I currently serve as a core team member on Middletown Works. I'm the co-chair with Shanae, actually doing parent engagement. So we talk to a lot of single parents, and we hope to help them find the resource that they need so that they become successful during their life challenges.
Wonderful. And next we have Kelvin Young.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much, Kelly, for this opportunity to be on this panel tonight. My connection to Middlesex County is I'm a resident here in Middletown, Connecticut, born and raised. But my path took a different route. I'm also a person that's in long-term recovery, which means I haven't used alcohol or any other drug to deal with my emotional distress since March 6, 2009. But before that, I was heavily addicted to alcohol, marijuana, cocaine, heroin, and prescription opiates. And I made a lot of poor choices here in my hometown of Middletown, Connecticut. Ran with some people that wasn't in my best interest. Ended up quitting school, but I had an opportunity to find freedom from alcohol and other drugs after I was released from prison, and having this opportunity to help other people that's dealing with addiction, mental health issues, or any other life challenges to help them to find their way back into the right path. So it's a pleasure to be a part of this illustrious panel discussion. I'm looking forward to it today.
Thank you, Kelvin. We're happy to have you. Next we have Ayanna Crockett. Ayanna?
Hi, my name's Lyanna. I use she, her, hers pronouns. I was born and raised in Connecticut, Middletown, Connecticut, and I went to school here from Moody to Woodrow Wilson to Middletown High. I'm currently a senior at UConn studying political science, studying fully online this semester. At UConn, I'm part of the symphony orchestra, undergraduate student government, and certain activist groups. And I'm currently working at City Hall in Middletown while studying remotely. And I also want to say happy Indigenous Peoples Day.
Thank you. And next we have Ed Ford Jr.
Hi, everybody. Thank you, Kelly, Kevin, and Middlesex United Way for hosting this event tonight. My connection to Middlesex County is having grown up here since 2004, having graduated through Middletown Public Schools, and then deciding to run for office. I ran for the Middletown Board of Education in 2017, and then I just recently joined the Middletown Common Council last year. I'm glad to be here. I love Middletown. I love Middlesex County, and I'm glad to talk about how we can make it more equitable.
Wonderful. Thanks so much, Ed. And last we have Erica Lynn Hunter, who, as I said, is on speakerphone. So go ahead, Erica.
Hello, everyone. Good evening, and thank you all. Thank you, Kelly and the United Way, for giving us this platform for Black voices to be heard. I'm a lifelong resident of the city of Middletown, born and raised. I'm just a passionate person who recently got involved with activism, although I've always had a voice and always knew what was right and wrong for Black people. I just basically took it a step further and started becoming more active and voicing and trying to get people on the same page. And I'm glad to be a part of this panel with everybody else, because everybody up here, actually we all speak the same language, and I'm proud of that.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Erica. And thank you to all the panelists for those wonderful introductions. So I'm going to pass the floor to Amy, who's going to talk about the housekeeping and our format for our event.
Thank you, Kelly. And thank you to all the panelists for your introductions. So the event is going to be run with Kelly asking a question. She will go through, and each of our panelists will have an opportunity to answer. And then for a series of 5 total questions. At the end of that, there will be the 30-minute Q&A. Again, we ask that all participants just keep themselves muted during the conversation so that we can hear what our panelists have to say. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Amy. Okay, we're going to start with the first question. So in your own perspective and from speaking with others in our community, what have you identified as some needs individuals and organizations can address that center on systemic racism and or racial equity in our community? Who would like to answer first? All right, Shanae, go ahead.
I was actually going to say housing issues. That for me, anyone who knows me knows that I'm big on housing matters. I always feel that housing is not equitable here. For me, I feel like it's like generational poverty, and we don't have enough people of color that are homeowners or are landlords. And I think that that's something that we need to have here. We need to have programming that teaches people of color how to get out of generational poverty and have generational wealth so that we can become homeowners just like everyone else.
That's a
And
really
then,
good.
and also I would probably say a little bit of education as well, but the main thing I always touch on is housing, because as far as like the educational piece, once you have that education and you learn, then you can, get on to the housing aspect of things.
That's a really great point. I know Ayanna wanted to speak next. Go ahead, Ayanna.
Like Shardae mentioned, education, I definitely think, at least from our elementary schools, there's different, there's an achievement gap between our elementary schools. I was lucky enough to go to Moody, which I know I had all the resources I needed, and I heard from other people who went to different elementary schools in town that the resources weren't exactly the same. So evening out that playing field so that, because the education you get in elementary school follows you all the way up into high school.
Yes.
I know for me, specifically, the education, that foundation that I got is part of the reason that I probably even went to college. All those things affect you all the way up to there. And another thing would be food insecurity. I know there's a lot of specifically food insecure students in Milltown who will be on free and reduced lunch at UConn. I'm part of the food insecurity task force, and we deal with providing services to food insecure students. We were lucky enough to get $60,000 in funding to provide gift cards weekly for food insecure students. All they had to do is fill out this survey, and we're going to send them a gift card for whatever grocery store they need to help provide that service for them. So I definitely think food insecurity, because it doesn't necessarily mean, I think when it comes to food, people think either I'm hungry, I'm not eating anything, or I'm fine. Food insecurity is just it's a complex issue. So I think addressing that and addressing it as an issue that's complex, it's not just about being hungry or not being hungry. It's about having healthy food, about having fresh food, and the opportunity to have those resources. So those are some things I think we could look at in our community.
Great.
Kelly, I think we can also look at, again, just what Shardae had mentioned about housing. That's a really huge one that I hope that we would talk about even more, even after this conversation as a community, because Middletown seriously has a lack of affordable housing. And we can't lie, Middletown, yes, we are a very diverse community, but also we have housing segregation that's, endemic to the United States. So we're still dealing with a lot of issues around that I feel like for a long time have not been addressed, but have been blown over. That's something that, again, we have to talk about as a community and come up with collaborative plans to address. The other side of that is, again, what Ayanna had just hit on just very, very critically, which is that achievement gap. I mean, that is something that a lot more school districts around the state and even the country are starting to become aware of. They're starting to realize that this is a thing that exists. But here in Middletown, I'm glad that we have leaders such as Dr. Connor, who has been leading our school district, the Board of Education that we have. I actually was just talking with Dr. Connor earlier, and it's amazing all of the things that all the changes that have been made in the last 3 to 4 years since he's been here to address that achievement gap. When you look at early childhood education, that's one of the ways that we can tackle it, by helping our kids to get the resources they need as early as possible. That's universal and comprehensive quality pre-K, right? As soon as they're 3 and 4 years old, helping them to increase and improve their literacy skills, because there is a literacy gap. And once they enter kindergarten, if they're already at a gap, that gap is going to continue throughout first, second, and third grade, and they're going to be on, sadly and unfortunately, what's called this school to prison pipeline. We can talk more about that later. So these are things that Dr. Connor, the Board of Education, and our community has recognized and been able to address. And I think it's time that we start taking these next steps toward those things even further, because we've got more of the road to travel, so to speak.
I agree. Would anyone else like to chime in?
I was going to say affordable preschool. My children, they're currently in kindergarten, and they were able to go through the Middletown preschool program at Snow School, which was, based on your income, which was beautiful for me. But it's only up to a certain amount of number of kids that they can hold. So it really needs to be an all, like a town-wide thing. And unfortunately, you know, you have those outside businesses like a Kinder Care or a Town and Country or whatever, which are expensive. So we definitely need affordable preschooling so that we can really, you know, like Ed said, meet those standards in reading and stuff.
And Erica, did you want to add anything?
I was looking. I like to piggyback off of Shanae. I like the idea and think about the idea of the affordable housing and everything for our community. When I was coming up, we had Long River Village, obviously still Maplewood Terrace, this and the third. And I think coming up, you look at those as it was predominantly Black residents that lived there, and it was like you weren't given too much of other places for resources as far as for housing. I mean, we did have families that own houses, which was a great thing, but a lot of these properties are already pre-owned, we're renting, and I think once we get educated as a community and start thinking about buying land that's available in the city of Middletown, which isn't too much, and just getting everybody on the same page to generate generational wealth, like I'm piggybacking off somebody else, I think we'd be stronger if we're able to educate each other and have more open forums. And honestly, bring back home economics in school and teach some of our children how to balance checkbooks and stuff like that.
Shardae is shaking her head yes.
But honestly, some of these kids, I look at some of this generation, they don't know how to write checks. They don't know how to do simple things in order for them to live in today's society. And there's certain things, even writing in cursive, they took that away from them. So it's like, start back into the school system, teach them how to do this, give them like a certain type of plan to see, maybe give them like a 2-year plan or a 5-year plan and see where they can see themselves at. It's like if I had the same thing, I had home economics, but we weren't taught certain things. But I think it starts in the school. And I think I don't know if it was Ayanna that stated that it does start in your early school years. It starts in your elementary school years and how you want. Once you get to a certain age, that's when they should start, putting things into it and developing your mindset. Because 10-year-olds, they have fundamentals as far as learning how to, count their money, do this and save their money and start teaching them early.
I'm seeing a lot of shaking heads, yes, in agreement. I think that what I heard, I was taking some notes, is food insecurity, housing, and education, and making all those affordable and starting young. I think those are some really excellent points, and it's nice to see that everyone's kind of in agreement on that, so we can kind of move forward in that direction when we talk about potentially doing something to help solve some of these problems. Okay, next, the next question is in relation to my last question, and we may have already answered this. What do you think are some impactful ways individuals and organizations can work toward changing the issues that you identified? So I think we did come up with some solutions, but if anybody had any final thoughts on that, you can feel free to jump in.
Well, I'd just like to add another piece to it, having access to quality health care, whether it's physical health care or mental health care. I think that's very important, even starting them young in school systems. But also, with COVID-19 have showed us how Black and Brown communities are disproportionately affected by so much health disparities that we face here in Connecticut and beyond. This virus, many Black and Brown bodies have died. We need affordable health care and access to quality health care to get the support that we need. And there's different organizations that's doing things here in the greater Middletown area. We have the Greater Middletown Health Enhancement Community Initiative run by Reverend Robin Anderson and Dr. Mike. They meet every month, and we come together and talk about healthcare and how do we help to dismantle some of the racial health disparities that we see here in Connecticut.
Great points, Kelvin. Did anyone have any final thoughts on this?
Yes, I actually wanted to kind of go back to when Shardae mentioned that we both co-chair with Middletown Works. Actually, that's part of the initiative. We are working towards employment and job training. So I always look at things like that. I think that having opportunities in the workforce and giving people opportunities for job training, because not everyone can go off to college. And if you give them, if you give people things like, you know, certificate programs and things to help educate them, it will allow them to get better job opportunities that will lead to better, you know, leads to education, leads to better, like I said, housing. Because if you don't have that educational piece, you know, it makes it a lot more difficult. A lot of these things overlap. So it's always the educational piece. And then you also want to be able to teach your own children, and how you're able to teach your children if you don't have that education. So just allowing for adults to be consistent learners, adult learners, and having those job opportunities develop, I think that would be great and impactful.
Absolutely. Erica agrees. Okay, so I'm going to move on to the third question. So moving from a broader community focus into a more of a professional one, how do you think organizations can best become more racially diverse and inclusive?
Well, organizations, oh, my apologies. Ms.
Sure,
Hunter, Ms. Hunter.
we'll let Erica go first, and then we'll get to you,
Yes.
Ed, okay? All right, go ahead, Erica.
I stated, I spoke about this before. We see a lot, especially in the city of Middletown. Unfortunately, there's a lot of positions that are not, I'm not going to say held, but are given to family members because they already have an existing person that works there, whether it be the city of Middletown or something else. Because sometimes you're hired by a who you know basis. Even if the other person, like Shanae, could be qualified, Lyanna could be overqualified and fit the bill for that job. But if somebody else that doesn't look like Lyanna and they have a family member there, guess what? They're going to actually probably be pushed. Because I know a couple of people that have been bypassed for employment with the city of Middletown, and they fit the bill. They should have been hired, and they weren't because they were bypassed because somebody had a family member there. We need our leaders, like we do have, you know, we have the NAACP president that, you know, has been made aware of all of this, but it can't be held for somebody that has family, people that are qualified for the job, and there shouldn't be a quota. We shouldn't have to get a job because of a quota. We earn that job, we deserve the job, and then options be given to us based on people who they know. You're either going to get hired because of who you know, or you're not going to get hired because of who you know.
Okay, good points. All right, Ed, go ahead.
I mean, literally spot on what I was going to say. City, I mean, she said it all. City Hall has a problem. City Hall has a serious problem. I mean, it has for a long time that there's been nepotism. There's been, you know, hiring for only who you know and, you know, who you may be related to, or, you know, whatever the case may be. And that's not fair or equitable at all. A lot of people in our community have been pushed out that way. And then the very few individuals of color that do get in have a difficult time elevating and, you know, achieving that upward mobility. It may take them a lot longer than it may for somebody else who, again, had a connection to even get in there. So this is something that it's going to take a huge structural, cultural, and systemic change all around in order to break this cycle that has been so ingrained within our city hall for decades. It's not going to happen overnight, and it's not going to be done by one person. I know that you know, Ms. Hunter just mentioned the NAACP president. That's one person, but we also need, you know, everybody else to hold our city hall employees and those who have hiring power specifically accountable when it comes to their hiring practices, reviewing their affirmative action policies, making sure they're abiding by those affirmative action policies, and continuing to be equitable and giving everyone a fair chance in our community. Also is the information piece, because sometimes the information, no, not sometimes, oftentimes, let's be real, the information is really not given out to several portions of our community. Why is it that the communities of color are the last ones typically to hear about a job that went out that they are more than qualified for, and they're the last ones to apply, even if they even make the deadline? And once they do, well, because they were the last one, they're not as heavily considered as the first top three. So that's something that we have to look at is how we disseminate information in our community to all people, to all parts of our community. Information equity has been a huge problem that is fed into that city hall nepotism.
I was just gonna say, can we just say, like, it's gonna sound so cheesy, but we need help. We can't, you know what I'm saying? In order for us to push the door down, we need help. And I often think of people who are starting small businesses and who get kicked out, or it's only for a month and they get shut down. Like, who is there to say, wait a minute, I know somebody that can help you make sure this doesn't happen, or whatever like that. Like, we need someone that's going to push and help us in that area. There are a lot of small business right on Main Street that have been there for years. And they have, listen, you know, like we said, let's be honest, we need the same help.
Lyanna, I know you wanted to speak.
Oh yeah, I like this point that Erica made about tokenization, people of color being put in positions just to meet a quota instead of actually looking at them as individuals who have something to provide to the table. And I just think in order for a place to be racially diverse, you can't look at people of color just to meet your quota, or for them just to do work that's race related. Like, people of color, specifically Black people, obviously a lot of the work I do is specifically related to race and my Blackness, but I also like to do other types of work. You know what I mean? Like, I know Shanae, you mentioned public works or planning and zoning. You know, different types of areas, different types of work. We're always expected to do things that are specifically related to our Blackness, when there's so many different avenues and so many different things that we can contribute to besides just people looking at us for specifically that. I think oftentimes, I know at least in my student government at UConn, oftentimes when I was in a space, I would just, people wouldn't want to hear my voice unless I was talking about something specifically related to being Black or being a woman. And if it wasn't related to that, it was kind of like the voice wasn't valued. So I think it's about, we want to make places more diverse instead of looking at people as something to just add to diversity, looking at the way that they think, their thoughts, the things that they can provide to the table. And also, like, no unpaid work. I think a lot of times people of color get thrown into positions, but unpaid ones, volunteering positions, things that they don't get paid for or compensated for. And it takes so much emotional labor to do all that work. And I feel like a lot of times, specifically, white people don't realize it takes a lot of emotional labor specifically to talk about things such as race, and specifically to do that work all the time. It's just a lot of emotional work. So I think knowing also hire people of color, hire Black people, BIPOC folk, but also pay us for the work that we do in so many different avenues, not just specifically race-related work.
Ayanna was spot on. Erica and Ayanna both were spot on. I say the same thing. It's the tokenism piece. And it's like, and it's not even just, you know, employment, it's boards and commissions and councils. I think that people of color need to be in positions of leadership all across the board. We want the same opportunities. You know, it's more so like, we don't want to be a seat warmer. We want to be able to sit at the table and eat from that table as well. We don't just want to sit there and just like, we're just there because we're filling a quota. No, we want to eat just like you. So we want to be able to have a voice and feel empowered and be able to utilize our voices. So I think you both were spot on with it.
Awesome. And Kelvin, I'm not sure if you chimed in yet. Did you have anything? Thoughts?
No, I haven't. Yeah, I'm hearing a lot of great things. And the organization I work for, Intercommunity Healthcare, you know, we brought in some help. We brought in some people to really help us to really look at the organization as a whole. You know, oftentimes you see Black and brown people at the front lines doing the frontline work, but when we move up to the ELT, the executive leadership team, it's nothing but white people. So we brought in some people to really just take a look at that, look at the policies to make Intercommunity a multicultural, anti-racist organization. And, you know, we put together a racial equity committee, and we meet every month, and we really look at the policies, the hiring practices, where, you know, where applications get applied for, you know, who get to view the positions that are being applied for, and how it's getting, you know, sent out, and where it's getting sent out to. Really taking a deep and thorough look at the organizational practices that's been going on for a very, very long time, and happen to really make some shifts and changes into the policies and procedures, and making sure that people are people that's qualified to these positions, Black and brown people are qualified for these positions to get the position. Because a lot of things that everyone said is so real, it's so true, you know, and we working to dismantle a lot of those systemic practices that's been going on for a very long time.
Excellent points, everyone. It sounds to me like you guys are saying that you want everybody to kind of hold themselves accountable within their own organization and set up some sort of system for accountability, as well as give opportunity and get the word out for everybody equally. And I think those are really important points. And to also not treat someone as a token, to value them as an individual and respect what they have to say and what they bring to the table beyond the color of their skin or their gender or any other thing that we can tokenize people as. So moving on to the second to last question, continuing on this theme, in what ways can individuals advocate for racial justice in the workplace, which I know some of you have already answered. And is there an example, if you haven't already given one, that you've seen it be successful? So I know Kelvin spoke about what he's doing at his workplace. Does anyone else have anything that they're currently doing at their own workplace or that they've seen work for a friend or someone in the community?
I actually want to speak about like collective agency and, organizing, making sure you have a group of people and community members that you can gather together. And, a lot of times people are fearing retaliation and backlash and job loss, so they don't always want to speak up and speak out. And I think that here, one thing that we did was when we started the school naming committee. I know that was a huge thing, but it was, it was a lot of people that were organizing together. And I kind of started out with assisting with that, but there was some backlash with that as well. And look at how it turns out. We all decided, we're going to still push forward with this. We're going to get the right people backing us. We had a whole committee formed around it, and we got exactly what we wanted, which was the Beeman school name. So I think things like that, just it's being strategic in who you have. You have some people that want to be vocal. You have some people that want to be behind the scenes, but making sure you have a collective of people that are willing to do the work and not fear, am I going to be fired for speaking out? Am I going to have people that are going to retaliate? Because people always think about that. And I'm one that I don't care about that. I have to use my voice. And I don't care, if there's going to be backlash because of it, because that's what I'm put here to do. I have to advocate. And I think that that's only right.
Very true. I think a lot of people feel the same way as you. Go ahead, Ayanna.
So I guess this is not really work related, but since I'm a student, I'm part of like different clubs and stuff on campus. So specifically with our undergraduate student government, we had a lot of issues with elitism, and oftentimes racism can be disguised as elitism. Things such as we had a rule that if you join the Senate, you have to dress up. You have to dress up very formally, which I think scares off a lot of students who may not have the money to dress up. And so we had town halls. I think community discussion is important and create that discussion, but also within that discussion we had during the summer where we had Zoom calls, oftentimes white students would start taking over the conversation. So I think it's important that when we have these conversations, especially in organizations that may have a lot of white individuals, it's important to be aware of how you're talking and then be aware of how much space you're taking up. I think a lot of times white individuals take up a lot of space in conversations, and sometimes it's important to make space, let other people speak. And not only, I think speaking is just as important as listening, and you need to make sure you're listening to people when they talk. And so I think that, I think community discussion is important. Town halls, just listening to people, but also being aware of how much space you're taking up and making sure that you're listening as much as you're talking.
I also think one thing that we need to do as a community is teach individuals how to advocate for themselves.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think that's done. I remember being in a forum at Middletown High after that whole, I forget, I believe you're on it, Lyanna, right? The alliance with the racial alliance that they put on a skit, and it was it was a really big deal because there was a lot of back and forth of what they had put on. But one gentleman said during that forum that no one teaches us how to take care of each other. No one teaches us how to advocate. And so then when we get into these forums, the young people are ignored because they're seen as too loud, too boisterous, very out there. So we need to be taught how to do it and have patience with us.
Ed, I see you shaking your head.
Yeah, no, I agree with Shardae 100%. You know, my mother, I always give her credit in how she was a huge advocate for my education. And she taught me how to be an advocate for myself. And if it were not for her, I cannot say I would be able to advocate for myself at all today. So teaching our students and teaching our youth how to be advocates for their needs, especially as students of color, which are needs that will not be met unless you speak up. Is critically and vitally important. I agree 100% with that, Shardae.
Thank you. Does anyone else want to speak on this subject before we move on?
Yeah, was it Shanae that spoke first?
Yes.
I think it was. I
Yes.
can't see everybody. I apologize.
Yep, you got it, Erica.
I remember she spoke about the whole process about the Beeman School. I remember watching a couple times. I guess there was like a Zoom meeting, and there was like a lot of pushback. That was probably one of my saddest times being a Middletown resident, seeing how much, I never realized how much racism existed in the city of Middletown, really until this whole time that we were trying to vote for the school name. And it was crazy how people felt like, you guys up here, the women up here, just felt like not alienated, but almost fearful because people were attacking them. It was unnecessary over a school name. And it was just, I never saw so much almost hate come out of the city of Middletown, period. That there's so much work that needs to be done. And the whole advocacy thing for our students, we have to be our own advocate, and we have to teach them to be their own advocate. I don't want to have to tell my younger cousins that are like 16 and 17, I don't want my teaching moment to be, oh, if this happens and you're out and a police officer pulls you over, that shouldn't be my teaching moment with them. These are the things that you have to do in order to survive. That shouldn't be it. I should be able to teach them, how to be successful. And these are the steps that you need to go forth and be in, not how to stay alive. And that's a problem that we're having in our community as far as trying to wear multiple hats as a community. We're trying to educate them how to maintain their lives, how to stay alive, how to be successful in life, but also let them be aware of what's going on in their surroundings as well as us.
Awesome. Kelvin, did you have anything to add? I know I kind of had you speak last.
No, this is great conversations, great flow. I just was reading one of the questions and it mentioned about self-care, and I just want to mention, doing this liberation movement or the social justice work or activism work, it's so important that we do our own inner work. And oftentimes that people come into these roles from our own trauma. And when we're looking and advocating and doing everything from a wounded trauma lens, it could cause harm not only to ourselves but to other people. And that's why self-care is so important. And I had an opportunity to train with Yolo Akili Robinson from Beam, and they talk about the healing justice work, doing healing justice work from that framework where Cara Page from the Southern Healing Justice Coalition, how they incorporate these different healing practices in the activism work, because it's so important that we heal so we can act and organize. And oftentimes, when we stressed out, overwhelmed, burnt out, not necessarily taking care of ourselves, we can easily get cynical. We can easily get, just pessimistic, and we could burn out. I see a lot of, activists and people that's doing this work in the liberation movement get stressed out and burnt out. So it's vitally important that we incorporate different healing practices, self-care tools, but not only self-care, we also talk about community care, right? Because it's important for us to not only take care of ourselves, but take care of our communities as well. And there's so many different pieces that I'll share a little later on how we're bringing community care to the city of Hartford. To the city of Middletown.
Absolutely. I knew what you meant. Okay, so for our last question, this is an opportunity for our panelists to kind of talk about what they're currently doing to address some of these needs through their own organizations or volunteering, kind of promote if you're interested in recruiting someone for something that you're doing, an initiative, and just let us know if there's a way to stay connected to you, or if you know of any groups like social, like online or something like that, in which we can all kind of stay connected to what you're doing, or if you know if there's something in Middlesex County that is some sort of networking device. So whoever would like to start, go right ahead.
Well, recently, as this past week, the Mayor Florsheim had announced the appointments to the Anti-Racism Task Force. I become one of those appointees, and we're going to have our meeting coming soon to organize and get that task force set up. What I would encourage everybody who's watching in the community to do is to continue to stay engaged and involved with the work of that task force, with the movement of that task force, and the several areas that we're going to be tackling. You all have so much expertise, and not just the people on this panel, but you all out there in the community have so much expertise that we need. This is not going to be a project of 15 people. This is not going to be a silo. This has to be a Middletown project to accomplish our goals of tackling systemic racism where it still exists. It's not something that's going to happen overnight, but it's going to happen through continual chipping away at the block. And so I want all of you to be encouraged to continue to stay involved. Even if you did not get picked this time, don't let that dissuade you. Your knowledge, your presence at the table, and I will advocate for you. If you need to reach out to me, you need to reach out to the mayor, to Councilwoman Blackwell or Councilman Darnell Ford, whoever you need to reach out to on that commission, reach out to, because we want you there. We want you to be involved and engaged. Again, this is not about us. This is not our commission. This is your commission. So please stay involved with that.
Awesome.
I'll actually highlight Middletown Works because Shardae and I are both on that. We definitely work with single parents of color, and that's like a big thing. You know, we're focused on employment and education matters. Also, I'm now a blogger for Shop Black Connecticut, highlighting Black small businesses throughout the state of Connecticut. I'm going to be selecting a few here in Middletown, but things like that. I mean, just highlighting a lot of our people here and highlighting businesses here, you know, just staying focused. I mean, we also have the Middletown Racial Justice Coalition that is really great. I see it, Diana Martinez is on the line, and that's spearheaded by her and Precious Price. Also, there's so many other things I can think of. It's just, I do so many things. So sometimes I kind of forget half the stuff that I do. But those three right there, I would say are big. You know, Middletown Works, the Racial Justice, and the Shop Black CT. So look out for some of my blog posts for that.
Great. And if you guys feel that you forgot to mention something that you'd like everyone to know about, we can put it in the follow-up email after the event so everyone can know. So don't worry if you forgot something. Okay. Anybody else? Go ahead, Ayanna.
So I'm on the Connecticut steering committee for Every Voice Connecticut. So it's basically like college students from all over Connecticut, Trinity College, Conn College, Yale, Wesleyan, UConn. We're basically put together SB 19, which is basically for sexual assault survivors. And it's an amnesty policy, which means that if you report sexual assault and you were under the influence, you're underage, you're not going to be penalized for that or put in any legal harm. So we're really trying to get that passed in the regular session in January. We wanted to be on the special session, but sadly that didn't happen. So if there's any way anyone could publicize that or support that, because a lot of sexual assault happens to students in college, and a lot of people are in fear because they may have been intoxicated and underage, say 18, 19, 20, that they feel like they can't tell anyone or that they're going to be in trouble if they do report something. So it'd be really helpful if you guys get that out there. It's Every Voice CT, and the bill is SB 19. So.
Okay, thank you.
As Shanae mentioned, I also serve on Middletown Works, and yes, we deal heavily with single mothers in the Black community, but I also have my own small business called I Teach, where I help students with tutoring, but very much teach them how to advocate for themselves. You know, especially now with this virtual thing, it is, you know, different. So helping them talk with their teachers through email and making them make sure that they're typing the email correctly and saying, I need help with this or I need help with that. So yes, a small business called I Teach CT LLC.
Awesome. Erica, did you want to say something?
Yes, I've been, I've been talking to a few people. I've held, a couple of marches. I did my last rally in regards to the Accountability Act with the police department. And, we really talked about what we're going to be trying to do for kids in the community. I've spoken to a couple of people. I haven't yet tried to put together a group because it's not about me. It's like, I'm such a back person. I like to be a foot soldier. I hate to be in the front. So it's like, I don't like to, all eyes on me type person. But I've been speaking to Theodore Freeman and some other people, and we're really trying to come together with the idea of a Boys and Girls Club in the city of Middletown. I actually found some land where it can actually go, and it's owned by a nonprofit. So I think that's probably going to try to be my focus as far as trying to get something for the kids and get that started. Obviously, we have to get some planning and zoning and getting the land surveyed and stuff like that. But that's what's going to be my goal. And I would love to join some of these other groups that are going on in the city of Middletown. I've had a busy summer, and I'm trying to get back into it, but I don't want to just be about the person that's marching or holding protest. I've been asked to come and sit down with the police chief and go to the mayor's office, but I don't want to go there with new people. I want to go there with people that are going to raise questions and want answers and demand answers. I don't want to go in there with a silent room. And I really want the leaders, the ones that people look at up to in this community that's been here for years or that's been leading for years, to really step up and do stuff. So if we can all work together, that'd be a great thing. I respect everybody on this panel. I really do. I've seen everybody's posts prior to this and everything that they have to say, and we are all really on the same page. We're all fighting the same fight, and we want the same outcome.
Absolutely. And Kelvin, I think you're the last one. Do you want to wrap us
Sure.
up?
Yeah, I really focus back on really taking care of ourselves as a community health worker, as a certified sound healer. I do work here in Middletown, and at the Free Center, which is on 52 Main Street here in Middletown. Starting today, but I wasn't able to make it today because I wanted to be on a panel. But every second Monday at 6 o'clock, we're doing a Let's Talk About It, a men's group, for Black men, BIPOC community, just to really talk about some of the issues, some of the stressors, some of the things that they're going through in their life, and really have a safe space where they can process their raw human emotions. Again, next Sunday, I'm doing a free yoga teacher training for the BIPOC community. And the only thing that we're asking is for people to learn these tools, learn these self-care tools, to really bring it back to the communities and offer these yoga classes free of charge. Last Saturday, I did a free sound healing for the Black Lives Matter 860 in Glastonbury at a park. It was a free session where people come together and talk about, their emotions, their feelings, and the stresses that they're doing in this movement work. And like I was saying before, people can easily get burnt out and stressed out. So it's so important that we replenish ourselves so we can do the work that we're here to do. And again, Kelly, you was at the event last month. We did at the Free Center as well too for the BIPOC community, where we offered sound healing, yoga, and plant-based nutrition, and being mindful of what we consume in our body, because what we consume in our body does affect our mental, emotional, physical well-being, and just really overall how do we truly take care of ourselves, because health is real wealth. And when we're focused, when we're centered, we get able to do this work more passionately and more in focus and more on point. Instead of emotionally reacting to situation, we can rationally respond to situation. So I know when I emotionally react to things, I say things and I do things that I later regret. But when I'm centered and calmed and focused, I can do the work that I need to do. So it's so important that we incorporate self-care and community care in our work that we do, particularly around liberation movements and social justice work.
Absolutely. So that ends our 5 panelist questions portion of the night. I want to thank you all so much for contributing. You all had such differing and yet overlapping perspectives. I'm very inspired and motivated. I don't know about everyone else, but I think this was awesome. I'm going to actually pass the floor over now to Amy, our moderator, and she'll be facilitating the attendee questions and feedback from you guys.
Thank you. So we're now going to start the Q&A. These questions are going to be asked in the order of which they were received in the chat. We just have a few for right now, so if you have more questions, keep them coming. And then let's just get started. Patty Ann had asked during the second question, does City Hall have an anti-nepotism policy?
That's a good question, Pat. Am I allowed to take that, Kelly?
Yes, yep.
Okay, yeah.
This is a free speak, whoever wants to join in.
Excellent. That's an excellent question. You know, there's no specific anti-nepotism policy that outlines and says that this is not, you know, permissible. Maybe that's something that we need to look at then, not that I'm aware of and so forth. But again, there are affirmative action policies that are in place that we're supposed to be following. There is an affirmative action monitoring committee that runs attached to the Office of Equal Opportunity and Employment that should be monitoring each department's level of hiring and what is the pool, what is the diversity of hiring that's happening from quarter to quarter, and are we meeting our goals in hiring a fair and equitable amount of people from diverse backgrounds in our community. If we're not, we didn't meet our goal, and that we failed at our goal for that. And that tells us that we need to do a much better job and pay much more attention to our practices, because we're falling into the old way of doing things, and that's not okay.
Great, thank you, Ed. Did anyone else have anything they wanted to add to Patty's question? Okay. So Beverly Lawrence asked, in regards to tokenism, when you have a white dominant organization, how do you make a change? So whoever would like to take that question over.
The white dominants will have to speak up for us. There's no other way. We can speak up all we want, but if it's dominated, you know, as they say, we have to hold hands, and you're going to have to speak up for us.
Yeah, I definitely think the first step is realizing that that space is white dominated. I think a lot of times people will be in a white dominated space and not even realize that that's an issue or that it's happening. So I definitely think that's the first step. And then the next step would be people either stepping down, taking a step back, encouraging people from the community to come into whatever organization it is, because a lot of times, like was mentioned many times before, there's not a lack of transparency within a lot of organizations and companies where they have their own little bubble. They don't really let the community know what's going on. So I think the next step would be saying, hey, we have this organization, we have this going on. People come, like, you know, let the people know. And then also, I think I kind of mentioned this a couple seconds ago, but I'll just making space for people to come in, because oftentimes if it feels like a closed off environment, at least for me, I know at college, going to a PWI, so predominantly white institution, there's a lot of spaces that I felt like were like, oh yeah, anyone can join, but I felt like it still wasn't for me because the people in it were making it feel like it wasn't a space that I belonged in or that I was even supposed to be in. So I think also just opening up the space is like also part of it. The first step, at least. It's going to take a lot of work, but I think at least the first step is realizing it and then making those first steps, which is making space, stepping down, and making it open to everyone. Easily accessible.
Thank you, Shardae and Ayanna. Did anyone else have anything to add to Beverly's question? Okay. Patty Ann had another question. Do panelists feel they have allies and mentors in serving and leading? If so, how were they attained, and how can the community help?
I got to unmute. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Erica. I was muted.
Oh, I think that as far as us having allies and mentors, you know, when I think the community can end up being allies together. I honestly think that all of these panelists, all of us, can be allies together because, like I said, we're speaking the same language, we're doing this for the same cause, and we're fighting for the same purpose. So our destination is the same. As far as mentors, I remember I spoke to Kevin Wilhelm at the second march I did for the Juneteenth march, and I talked to him for a bit. I never spoke to him prior to that, him actually coming. I spoke to my pastor because obviously that's where I seek my spiritual guidance from. And I also spoke to other people that have been doing this fight, that have spoke out and have done this prior. So even at the age of 46 years old, I still sought out wisdom and knowledge from other people. Even Ed, although Ed is younger than me, he's voiced in other areas and that I'm not. So I would still look at him because I'm going to rely on the people that are looking in the same direction I am. I would look to Shanae, I would look to Shardae, I would look to Ayanna, I would look to Kelvin because we all bring something different to the table. And I think that when you come together as a group, you're great. So yeah, I reached out to mentors, different people of different races to see which way am I going with it.
Great, thank you. Nikita Brown asked, and Kelvin, I know that you touched on this in regards to self-care. Nikita asks, what do you all do to de-stress or self-care to replenish yourself since you give so much to others within your families and communities?
For me, I have, like accountability partners. I have someone who, when I feel like I'm, besides God, but, people here in the flesh, I have someone that I can always go to and, just kind of just talk through, certain things. Not a therapist, but not that I haven't had that as well, but just someone who you can talk to that maybe will give you some type of guidance. It may be a pastor, it may be a friend, it may be a sibling, but you always want to have someone that you can kind of talk to and just kind of rely on in a sense. That just works for me.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. Like being open with people with how you feel, sometimes it can be overwhelming work. It's very emotionally taxing. So I think being honest with other people who may be in activist positions as well, and debriefing, calming down, even taking maybe a week break from the work that you do, because you always give, you have to know when to pull back. And I think in a world where Black people specifically are seen as Black bodies, as individuals that do labor and do all this work, the most radical thing you do, I think, is taking care of yourself and taking care of other Black individuals and looking out for each other. I think that's one of the most radical acts you can do in a world where we're seen as disposable almost. So definitely knowing when to step back, because I think it's difficult to know sometimes, but definitely necessary.
I actually like to call it a reset moment. I had a few of those this week. Well, last week, but just having your moment where you just like, you know what, I think I just need to just be in my own space, journal, just think and process a lot that's going on. And then when I want to come out of that space, then I might go to that accountability partner or partners and say, okay, here's what I was thinking. And I needed that moment to just de-stress and, pour out what has been going on, what you are thinking.
Yeah, that's big. That's really big, Shanae, 100%. It's taking that time to process is everything. Because if you don't, it will come out at the wrong time. You didn't process it. So now it's some just raw emotion. Like I thought Kelvin was, I believe, talking about earlier. I've got a group of brothers that I can always rely on, that I call them. I'll text them and let them know what's on my mind. And if something is really bothering me, something's really stressed me out, or I just need a second, like you said, a reset moment, right? I just need that reset moment. So when I call them up, we're men of faith. They pray and intercede for me. They dust off my shoulders and they pick me back up and they say, you got this, Ed, and they keep pushing me forward. So you really got to have those people around you that you can rely on, their family.
So true. When I think about when, COVID kind of first hit, it was dealing with a mental and a physical health crisis, but there's also an economic crisis as well, too. A lot of people lost their jobs. A lot of people lost their businesses, a lot of financial hardship for many people. And, seeing Black and brown bodies being murdered, being killed, it brought up a lot of vicarious trauma within me. And I'm dealing with my own trauma and from my own processing with addiction, I realized that underneath the addiction was the unhealed trauma, the unhealed emotional pain, and the chronic stress that wasn't dealt with. And when I seen, particularly George Floyd being literally choked to death by a so-called police officer, that brought up so much anger, so much rage, so much just feelings came up within me. And I'm so grateful for my self-care practices, such as sound healing, deep breathing exercise, like Shanae was saying, like journaling, and all these different holistic practices and support that I have from my partner, from the fans, my friends, and people that's in my life. And I remember after watching that video, I literally had to go outside, take my socks and shoes off, and literally ground myself, and earthing, what they call it, and literally ground myself. Then I played some bowls, but I didn't realize how traumatic that was until the next day when I woke up with a very heavy heart, and just tears was flowing out of my eyes. And what really struck me the most, when hearing George call out to his mother, that activated the trauma that was in me, the unhealed trauma from the passing of my own mother. And so from that helped me to really seek out therapeutic support, professional support, because there's nothing wrong with seeking out that professional support. And oftentimes, working in the mental health field, there's a lot of stigma in the Black and Brown communities about mental health and even physical health support as well too. So having these tools in my life really helped me to get over the trauma and the stress that I was feeling. And from all of that, we created what we call the Connecticut Black Mental Health and Wellness Initiative. And it's consisted of over 30 different psychotherapists and wellness practitioners. And we have monthly virtual sessions where people have an opportunity to vent, to mourn, to grieve, to share their emotions in a safe space, but also learn different self-care tools that they can utilize, like breathing exercises, meditation, different qigong practices. And we share different resources for people to help them to deal with any type of emotional distress or addictive states, or a healthy way to process their raw human emotions. And I will share that link to, actually we changed it to the Connecticut BIPOC Mental Health and Wellness Initiative, because there's BIPOC community, it fits more better than the work that we're doing. So I will share that link in the chat as well too. But it's so important that we do the tools, the practices, the modalities to help us to take care of ourselves.
Self-care this year. I had COVID back in April, and I didn't have taste or smell for 27 days. I never had a fever, but it took a toll on my body, and I really was still struggling with side effects for even 2 and 3 months after. Like, I see a specialist still because of the effects it had on me. At the second March, nobody knew about it, but somebody brought me a bulletproof vest to my house because I was a target because of everything that was going on. Other festivities that were supposed to be planned were canceled by the city of Middletown because you're not supposed to have anything because of COVID. But yet we were able to march. There was so much outrage behind the marches that were taking place that my life was threatened. I had anxiety. My anxiety built up almost every single day. And I still have this bulletproof vest, and that's why there were police, like, they were in regular plain clothes in the audience at the second march, and they were close to the stage because my life was threatened and my anxiety took over. But I learned how to. I do have a therapist, and I learned how to breathe, and I had to become more aware. But now I can take a moment because it was a busy time from the end of May, watching George Floyd, like Kelvin said, be murdered. And then, actually, you figure out this whole year since February, with everything that's transpired, with all the murders that we've seen this year, with COVID, the pandemic within a pandemic, it's like you have to take care of yourself, because I could have literally just went crazy, especially when somebody's trying to threaten your life. But now I put myself in a peaceful state of mind. And what really put my mind at peace was actually, I've had a few people pray for me over the phone, or they would inbox me prayers, not just the copy and paste type prayers. They would literally pray for me in the inbox if they couldn't get, or send me a text. It was by the grace of God that my brain and my anxieties all chilled out. And you have to take a moment and say a reset moment. That's what I had to learn how to do is, you know, start saying no to certain things that I know that's going to probably, I hate saying no to people, but I had to start learning how to say no that I can't because I have to take time for Erica.
I have to agree with most of the panelists. You know, just for me, it's an everyday thing. A morning routine for me is getting up and walking. And on my walks, I pray, I worship, I cry, I scream, I dance, whatever I need to do to, like Shanae says, reset. And of course, I have, you know, people that I can talk to. I seek wise counsel, but I know that if I don't do that morning routine, at some point I will lose it. And so, you know, with everyone said, it's so important. And sometimes the biggest thing is to definitely put up boundaries. I'm not answering that email today. I'm not answering that phone call today. I have to relax, you know? So definitely.
I actually like to call that the power of no. And I had to learn that this year because I feel like I say yes to everything. I want to be everywhere. I want to help out. And it's like, sometimes, like Shardae said, you have to say, I'm not going to respond to that email. I'm going to wait. And anyone else who knows me knows I'm a night owl. So sometimes that's, for me, the best time for me to have my reset moments, even though I have them throughout the day. But those are my moments where I'm like, okay, everyone else is asleep. I can really just have my own time. You know, I'm a single mom, so it's really hard to have that time to yourself. You know, you have kids knocking on the door saying, mommy, mommy, and want to talk to you about everything under the sun. And then everyone else is calling you and emailing you. I mean, it's happened while we're on the call. I'm like, no. So, I mean, for me, I have to have those moments where I'm like, you know what? Let me just take my moment. Let me journal. Let me listen to music, whatever it may be. Let me just have time for myself, talk to God, and just do what I need to do for me. That's just those moments for myself. And it is really hard, you know, like Erica said, that power of no, it's really hard when you like to do this type of work and be an advocate, but you have to do it because you need to distress from you. You know, you're trying to be there for everybody else and you're not even there for yourself. So that is self-care to the T.
Thank you all for your responses to that. On to the next question from Stephanie. She asked, does Middletown Works have an organization specifically for employment training?
Not necessarily an organization. We have a career navigator, Camille Smith. So she's the one who recruits parents and she gets the ball rolling in that. And then we have a core team that we all work together. And, you know, we come up with ways to collaborate with other organizations to find out employment opportunities. And then when you have, you know, myself and Shardae, we're on our single parent lives on every other Friday. You know, we've kind of, you know, taken a little hiatus for a bit, but we, you know, a lot of times we discuss things like that as well.
Thank you. And Kevin Harris would like to know, besides being an advocate, what would be the most beneficial change an individual can make?
I think being aware of our own personal biases, like no matter who you are, you have biases in whatever sense, and being able to be aware of that, I think, is a good step to make with yourself. Because I think a lot of times we like to think we're perfect, or we like to think that no, like I could never be like that, you know. And I think being aware of that, it's harder than it seems, you know. There's so many different avenues, so many different like me specifically, like I'm a Black bisexual woman, so I'm Black, I'm a woman, and I'm also queer. And there's many ways that people could be putting their own biases on me, or even ways that I could be putting my own biases on other people. So being aware of that and stopping your own thinking and being aware of how you think about things.
I think that's good to recognize just exactly what Ayanna just said, recognize your own biases. You know, us as individuals, we're not exempt. And a lot of times we can forget to look at ourselves in the mirror. That leads me to say that to practice what you preach. You know, some people I see that they'll say one thing on Monday, but then they're doing another thing on Friday. They're saying they're preaching for racial equity on Monday, but then when they have the power to make a change or a difference in the life of a Black person, they don't take that opportunity, they actually end up hurting or damaging that situation, that Black person in that situation. So practice what you preach. Just don't be a hypocrite. Just do what it is that you say you believe in and make a real difference that way.
Just piggybacking off of both of them, transparent, be transparent.
Mm-hmm.
That's the best way to be. Nobody is perfect, and in your flaws, someone else can be lifted and feel like they're not alone.
Mm-hmm.
And our next question comes from Patty Ann. Would it matter what race the accountability partner would be? So when we were talking about self-care and having your accountability partner.
I would say no, because you have your white allies and you have people of color that, of course you can relate more to someone who, looks like you, but it doesn't mean that you wouldn't be able to have a white person be an accountability partner, as long as they're aware and they're cognizant of what's going on with their Black counterpart. I don't see an issue with that.
And I would like to add, Shanae, I think it's also actually a good thing to have someone that's an ally that's, different race than you too,
Mm-hmm.
just to see, both sides of the coin and understand
Mm-hmm.
how they're thinking, how we're thinking. I think it's healthy, if anything.
Mm-hmm. And varying perspectives, yeah.
Yeah, I think the same thing too. I think that some people are going to get misconstrued information, because although we're trying to make sure that within our community that we're fine, it's not like we can't work with other people to make sure that we're fine. All hands on deck. In order for the betterment of people, all hands on deck. That's how I look at it.
Great, thank you. Aranora asks, what can smaller organizations within a larger restrictive system do to decrease and address institutional distrust within the community?
I think this has been brought up a couple times, but I think transparency is one of the biggest things. A lot of times the institutional distrust comes from people being deceived or lied to and not actually knowing what's going on behind the scenes. So I think one thing would be transparency. But that's only one thing.
The institutional distrust makes problem solving harder. As long as we are working towards the same solutions, try to eliminate institutional distrust, because when there's distrust, it makes everything, the task, even harder. It makes everybody probably more apprehensive to work with somebody else if there's any type of distrust. But, if we can all get on the same page, then we're fine. Be transparent. That's the word of the day, honestly.
Mm-hmm.
Kevin Wilhelm asks, what is the barrier to equity that is the hardest to overcome?
It's a good question. I took this class in college, and there was our professor taught us a statistic that says when a Black person was raised poor, it takes them 3 times as long to get to where they want to be. So if that's 3 times as long, that means they're not really going to make it until 50 or 60, give or take, if they go to college, if they, you know what I'm saying? There's a lot of factors for them to get there. That's a really hard question. There are many things. There are many things. I can't just name one.
I think one of the hard. Oh, sorry.
No, you go ahead, Ayanna.
I think realizing the intersectionality of everything, like it's very complicated. I think people look at things through one way, like, oh, either it's racism or it's homophobia or it's like, misogyny. But all those things work together to keep people oppressed. It's all working together. It's all these systems working together at once in multiple ways, which affects everyone differently. So I think realizing that and how complex it is really important. And I think it's a missing piece for a lot of people, and even me at some point. I didn't realize that. Like I said, like I'm a Black woman. Not only may I face racism, but another day I may face misogyny, or those two things combined, which that all those things combined creates oppression and inequality. So addressing all those things and realizing how connected they are.
Yeah, I was saying before, it's very complex. It's a system that we have been, really trying to make change in for decades, if not centuries, really centuries. But in terms of the American context and being, having political authority and power and political agency, decades, and it's something that it's way too many factors, it's way too many layers. So I think Shanae said earlier, a lot of the things we're talking about overlap, and a lot of these things have been built upon generation after generation to where there's no really one answer for that question. Like it's A, B, or C. No, it's the whole alphabet. It's a whole bunch of things that we have to address really. And there's a lot of societal norms that today are just now being successfully challenged that for a long time we're seen as socially acceptable, and this is okay to say and do this and to deem these people a certain way and so forth. And it's not. Now that's starting to be debunked, like, hey, it's not okay to say that. Okay, listen, let's look at history for what it is and not what we made it up to be or what it was whitewashed to be. Let's look at this and notice that this was never okay. So it's a combination of systemic and cultural layers that have continued to proliferate throughout the decades of again our shared existence in this country. So.
Now, are there organizations or groups in Middletown that someone could join if they would like to get more involved in the movement, such as volunteer opportunities? Is there something that young leaders can do to further support the Black community in Middletown?
I would actually say linking with the Racial Justice Coalition. They're doing a lot of work in this area. So, definitely reaching out to the two that, and she actually just put in the chat, reaching out to the two heads of that, I would definitely say that would be a start. Yeah, that would probably be what I would say first and foremost. And, and getting to know, the players in NAACP, things of that nature, and meeting some of your elected officials and getting involved in that area in your, your municipal government.
I definitely agree, Shanae. I feel like local government is so underrated. People are sometimes are so focused on national politics, which are obviously important, but also local government is also equally as important, if not debatably more, because it affects everyday life so much. And it's so easy to get involved and to watch. Now everything's on Zoom, so you can attend a Zoom meeting, you can look at what's happening, whether it be Common Council or a DTC meeting, anything like that, just to get involved. I also think Middletown Mutual Aid Collective, I think redistributing funds is also important. So if you have little money here or there, to give it or to donate where you can, to give to other individuals in the community. And like it may not mean every time you may be able to donate, but even if you can, just doing that, I think is really helpful, and it's a start.
Yeah, it's definitely a way to give back into the community, with the resources. So yes, I agree with that, Ayanna.
And I was going to say, you don't have to necessarily join an organization. I mean, if you just want to mentor someone, take a minute, an hour or so out of your day. You don't have to take them out. Just talk to them. How can I help you? Or what can, something, just offer something something that you've learned in your life that will help a younger person?
For our final question, Sandra asks, how is the religious community of churches, temples, and other institutes creating a unified voice and purpose in support in Middlesex?
Well, you do have earlier what was mentioned, the coalition, the POC coalition that was formed during this pandemic and led by Reverend Robin Anderson to try to address the health disparities that this COVID-19 virus has revealed, even in Middlesex County. That's one way that has really surfaced in the last few months. And along with that, you see the several ministers around town that have joined in this ministerial alliance, that have joined, and whatever resources that their church has to just offer the community. And really everyone's trying to do everything they can in this time, especially a time like now that we're going through a pandemic. People have just put whatever they have, whatever their churches can offer and the individuals in their churches can offer to the forefront to say, hey, you know what, we're in this together. Put it all in the pot. We're all going to take from this together, because at the end of the day, this came from the community. It's going back to the community. So those are two ways actually that the ministers that I know of in this town so far have sort of tried to contribute to helping the community to be uplifted. And in terms of racial justice issues, you see how we talked about education. There's several churches that provide and offer the childcare resources, the tutoring resources, the educational resources that Shardae is very familiar with, I know, especially being a tutor herself, that have really given back to help our kids get the extra help and needs, get their needs met after school. So those are some ways educationally that the churches have also been able to help. I think somebody asked an additional question about the churches. It popped up, but I'm not sure if it's available or not.
Patty Ann asks, how about the white churches?
And that's a good question as well. You know, from what they've offered, you know, I definitely have seen a lot of those churches continue to really offer the same thing and say to the community, what we can do to provide for you and be an ally. We're here for that. As we've talked about allies during this panel, I've heard a lot of our white allies in these churches and white ministers speak up on behalf of racial injustice, speak up and come out in the streets to actually march with us, sit down and talk with us and say, okay, what can we do to help? Just sit and listen and allow us to be able to offer solutions to help us get over what we've been going through. That's the biggest thing and most powerful thing I think that they could do in this situation to offer is be an ally. That's really the main thing that I would request. Be an ally, listen, and help us to drive the boat to the solutions that we need to solve our issues.
Well, I could speak for the marches that I've done, especially the second march that was done on Juneteenth. White churches have been very supportive. I believe it's South Congregational, the one that's across from the Green. You know, they opened up their church, they gave supplies, they provided sound equipment, anything that we needed. They even did like a water station, snack station for the protesters and marchers. They made sure that they were just a part of it. They reached out for every step of the way. They did their Black Lives banners. I actually have to say that they were very supportive. They've been great allies. People, we're in a pandemic of illness, but we're also in another pandemic, an ongoing pandemic, which is an ongoing nightmare within the Black community. And we have allies that are other races that see this and want it to stop and feel that it's disgusting like we do. So, like I said, I think we can get through this together, and we're stronger together. This is a diverse community, like we've been saying from the beginning, and I've seen the diversity more so over two marches, especially the second march. You know, the people that were up there were the diverse people that marched. I think that Middletown can actually pull together and be great. We just have to fix some things, and I'm never going to use the term bad apples, but we have to fix a lot of what's going on behind the scenes in order for us to be in a better position.
everyone. I just wanted to, on behalf of the Middlesex United Way Young Leaders, I wanted to thank you all for attending this event. And thank you again to our panelists for your voices, your perspectives, and your advice. If you would, again, we're the Middlesex United Way Young Leaders Society. If you are interested in learning more about us and what we do, or joining our committee, please visit middlesexunited.org/YLS, or get in touch via email. I'm Stephanie, I'm the membership coordinator, so I will put my email in the chat. It will also be in the follow-up email. And again, please look out for a follow-up email that we will have that includes the recording and links to the organizations and whatnot. So thank you again.
Thank
Thank
you.
you, guys.
Thank you guys for having us. Thank you.
Thank you, panelists. Thank you, everyone, for attending. Thank
So
you
much. Have a
An
great
applause.
day, everyone.
All right.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye. Everybody be safe.